Previously, I discussed the confusion people seem to have between lose and loose. That's not the only source of confusion I see quite regularly, though it is the most annoying one, at least by my current reckoning. There's two more that I want to talk about today, and one of them can usually be ascribed to a simple typo. The other one is probably more likely related to confusion over the correct word. You've probably heard the term rogue, and you've probably seen it written many times. That's rogue, R-O-G-U-E. That's basically something that isn't fitting in with established patterns or is not adhering to established rules or basically that sort of thing. I often see rogue written as rouge, R-O-U-G-E. And you can see the difference between that is the U and G being reversed. The problem with this particular typo, though, is that rouge is actually a word in English. It comes from the French word for red, but in English it refers to a cosmetic. So when you talk about something like the rouge agent because you made a typo, that just sounds kind of dumb, doesn't it? After all, a red agent. Well, maybe you meant that. Maybe he's an agent working for an organization called Rouge. But mostly you mean rogue. An agent that's basically gone against his mission or something like that. The other one I want to talk about this time is the good old mute point. Wait, no, it's not mute point. That would be a point that isn't saying anything or can't say anything or is totally silent. Maybe you mean that, but odds are you don't. What you really mean, and the phrase that you really are intending to use, is moot point. I can see this confusion coming for non-native speakers of English, especially if their particular language doesn't have the distinction between the vowel sounds in the two words. You have mute versus moot. They're very similar, and if you don't have that U sound that's in mute, moot and mute would sound pretty much the same. Now, mute is M-U-T-E. And that basically means silent or unable to make a sound. So, someone who can't talk is a mute. The sound on your TV is muted if it's turned off. Moot, on the other hand, M-O-O-T, is something different. A moot is basically a meeting to debate or discuss something. It has since acquired the meaning of a meeting that will never come to a conclusion or a satisfactory conclusion on a topic. So, basically, a moot point is a point that doesn't matter, that we can send it to a moot, and it doesn't matter if it ever comes to a conclusion. Another way of saying it is that a point is academic, and basically meaning the same thing, that academics never come to a conclusion on anything. They just continue arguing. Generally, a moot is considered to be a very long meeting, so you really don't want to send something to a moot. So, if something can be safely sent to a moot, it's a moot point. That is, the point itself doesn't actually matter. So you don't want to write mute point. It doesn't actually make sense. What you want to write is moot point. And this appears to be a general confusion between the two words. So how do you avoid making this particular error, the mute versus moot error? Well, first of all, you need to make sure that you're pronouncing the words correctly. You need to understand that there's two different words, and they are pronounced differently in English. There are languages without a distinction between that vowel sound, and this would be difficult for speakers of those languages. But you need to remember that a mute point would be one that's silent. So if you say a silent point, well, I can think of a couple of obscure cases where that might be right, but generally it doesn't make sense. So if you just replace mute with silent, and if it still makes sense, maybe you have it right. Moot, on the other hand, and I don't generally see people writing moot instead of mute. I usually see it the other way around, and it's almost always in the crystallized phrase, moot point. I think even for native English speakers, you get some confusion on this point because the word moot is not generally common in everyday speech. And as a result, it's not something most people will have encountered when they are reading or what have you, except in that crystallized phrase of something being a moot point. Or something just being moot. Anyway, both of these problems, Rouge versus Rogue and mute versus moot, can be mostly avoided by careful proofreading of what you write. Be aware that they're common errors and look for them specifically. I'm William Astle, and this has been Lost Wizards Musings. Thank you for watching.